Yeah, that sounds like a really, really exciting party. Yeah, I would totally love to go if time permits and nothing jumps up, getting in the way. That would be just perfectly awesome. All right, listen, thanks for the invitation, and I gotta go. I'm doing the Leo reading right now. Okay, bye for now. Hello, Leo, and welcome to Call the Astrologer. That's what it's called. I do a lot of these readings. Call the Astrologer, your 2019 spring reading. Exciting times going on. This reading prompted by the movement of Mars from Gemini to Cancer, and then all the aspects that is going to make. But the thing is that, as is sometimes the case, Leo is on a completely different wavelength than many of the other signs because most of the big transits are affecting you quite differently than the other signs. I'll show you how that looks in a second when I bring up your solar chart. So you may be having a different experience of our time in history, our time in the travels of the world than other people, and your constitutional structure is quite different astrologically from most people because your sign is the only sign in the entire zodiac of 12 signs that is ruled by a star. We talk about astrology being about the stars, but really the star that we, deal with the most is the sun, right? There's SPF should be star protection formula because it's protecting us from a big star right nearby, and then all the other planets that everyone is subject to, or that rule their signs, orbit your ruling thing, right? So that's a very different position to have you in. You are represented by the sun, and then that puts you right into the middle of the action. And this is the basis of my astrological reasoning that the sign Leo is misinterpreted. I guess there are people that give any sign a bad name. There are going to be the Pisces lushes who never get out of bed, but they give Pisces a bad name, and the Aquarians who geek out and never take a shower. But all right, but what the people who give Leo a bad name are the ones who are kind of like the super duper self-centered jerk types. But I think that the real natural inclination of Leo, because it is ruled by the sun, which is the center of the solar system, and it's holding together 750,000 known planets orbiting our sun, right? All these new discoveries, there's now 750,000 of them. And I'm not counting exoplanets. I'm not counting planets orbiting other stars. Just your sun, our sun, has 750,000 planets going around it. And the sun holds them together with its gravity. It warms them with its light and with its radiation. And the sun represents you in astrology, and this puts you in a different position, for example, than someone whose sign is ruled by the moon, which has nothing except a couple of space probes orbiting it. So the other thing is that the sun or things associated with the sun really take transits better because of this property of the sun being at the center of it all. So let's take a look at your chart here, and I'm going to use two versions of the chart for this reading, using kind of one with the more commonplace planets and one with I'll use something other than a vaping pen as a pointer. So the major planetary movements going on right now are first of all, Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the 6th house. This is currently retrograde, and this is on a kind of a double clock for the beginning of 2020, 1/12/20, when these planets form their one and only exact conjunction, and then the end of 2020. I'm gonna draw this in here because it's so applicable to your sign, and then also Aquarius, which we'll get to on Friday. All right. So part one of this conjunction takes place on 1/12/20. Big one. It's going to shape the world in some unusual way. At the end of 2020, there's another conjunction of the two largest planets, Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter is currently here, and then over the course of 19 and 20, it's going to move up out through here. It'll make a conjunction to Pluto, and then it'll form a conjunction to Saturn on the winter solstice of 2020. So on 112, there's this conjunction. On the winter solstice, there's this conjunction. And so it's like the year begins with a major conjunction, one that happens about every 37 years, and it ends with a major conjunction, one that happens every 20 years. And it's a big time in history. My sense is that when the conjunction occurs in Aquarius, right on the cusp of your seventh house by solar archetypal chart houses, that's a big a transition in your life, and I reckon a positive one, but you have a lot to go through before you get there. So there's going to be a lot of setting yourself free from past habits, mental habits, work habits, things that your time is invested in, things that you don't want to be doing. And this has been a process over the past 11 years or so, with Pluto going through your sixth house. Right. For the past 11 years, Pluto has been covering this territory. And now it's out to about here. And so there's been a lot of upheaval and a lot of work-related changes, possibly health concerns that you are close to resolving and need to just make sure you take the last steps toward resolving them, or at least fully stabilizing them, and not being so kind of pulled around by them. Okay, so that's one thing that's happening, and it's pretty much it's the lead story, but not in your chart. The lead story in your chart is a twofold story. It involves Chiron entering Aries, your ninth house, simultaneously with Uranus entering Taurus, your 10th house. So these are important houses. As the houses progress around the chart like this, the themes become more complex. The further you go around the wheel, the more people get involved. The more complex the relationships are, though there's quite a few complex relationships here in the 8th house. And then, we start to get into matters of power and authority around the 8th. And then we enter the public realm of the chart. So what we have are planets, slow-moving outer planets, leaving the more personal realms and entering the more public realms. So, for example, Chiron in Aries is really pushing, driving, or inspiring you one way or another to be part of a bigger world, to think of yourself as part of a much bigger world than you might normally think of yourself as being part of, to step away from your desk and to go places, to experiment with ideas, and to, more than anything, experiment with the idea of who you are and what you are and what the nature of your relationship to existence is about. So Chiron wants direct experience, right? So you've got Chiron in Aries in the 9th. And Aries wants an experience of self, not of identity, not of labeling, not of asserting that you're something, but the actual direct experience of being yourself. Do we have much of that lately? I don't know. I don't think so. I think where's that fucking thing? My iPhone. I think we're doing a lot of the iPhone thing, and we're enamored of like the new app somehow being an extension of us, the new feature on the computer being some kind of an extension of who we are. And I think that we are all way too identified with our devices, and this is a very dangerous state of affairs right now. I think we need to get a grip on this, and there's a spiritual crisis connected with this. And I think that Chiron's presence in Aries in your 9th house is going to shock you into some awakening about the need to live from who you are, and get the technology filters out of the way of your experience of the universe and of yourself and of your higher self, if you use that concept, of God, if you use that concept, because there are so many filters in the way. And Chiron is kind of a radical awakening to direct contact with whatever it is the spiritual path is supposed to lead to. Whatever we're doing on the spiritual path, it's supposed to have some end result or some goal or some process, even if we want to use that concept. And Chiron is saying, take a direct route, base your assessments on experience and not on theory. Chiron is the triple experience planet. All right, let's keep going. Uranus has also entered your 10th house. This continues the adventure theme of Chiron in the 9th. Chiron in the 9th is kind of the worldly, spiritual adventure. Uranus in the 10th is about experimenting with your work, experimenting with your sense of duty and responsibility in the world. It's about experimenting with what you want to do. It's about hearing new and different callings. New and different callings. This is a very crucial concept of Uranus in the 10th house. And it's likely that you tend to proceed in a stable way with your callings and with your sense of what your professional life is supposed to be. And Uranus is here to shake that up. Uranus is here to get you to experience your calling in a more experimental, radical, surprising way. So there could be changes in your professional life as a result of this that seem to come from outside of your control. There could also be changes in your professional life where you say, I've got to do something more interesting. What am I doing sitting here at this desk working for this company? What am I actually creating? What am I actually producing? Can I be the person that I am? Can I live the experiment of my life and of my work? What am I doing with my precious days? Can I be free to express something exciting and interesting? And if you don't like the answers to the questions you're asking, definitely ask them. Chiron will help you ask questions about the nature of your existence, right? Because you have this marvelously spiritual placement of Chiron in the 9th is helping you get philosophical, that is helping you go deeper. But one of the things I've observed participating in spiritual path type movements and being around a lot of people who are in them, going back to like New Age 2.0 in the 1980s, is that there's a lot of conceptualizing and not a lot of real questioning and action being taken. So Chiron is helping you to formulate your concepts and ask real questions and get experience. And then Uranus in the 10th is saying, okay, now that has to be conveyed into something in the real world, because the 10th is a very real world sign in terms of how the world is organized, the world is run, the way that people think about who they are, think about what they want to do with their lives, and the calling that you feel. So these two transits will very much be cooperative. All right. Then comes the Mars transit. So between the 15th of May and the 1st of July, a phase of about 6 weeks, Mars is going to cross Cancer, which is your 12th house. And in crossing Cancer, Mars is going to make aspects to all of these planets, but especially the planets that are collected in Aries and Capricorn, where there are quite a few. We're going to get to that in the second chart in a moment. Now, the thing about the 12th is that it represents a kind of a blind spot. And so, as such, it's possible and often happens for things to go missing in the 12th. I mean, so if you're ever looking at your chart, get an inventory of the 12th house and see what's in there. Maybe look up the asteroids on Serenu.com and ask yourself what is missing and how it corresponds to what is visible in the 12th. So one of the things that might be missing, for example, in the 12th, is a clear sense of your own cycles. Now, there's solar cycles, there's lunar cycles, and there's other different kinds of cycles like motorcycles, which is a very ninth house theme. If you've ever read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, one of the top 5 books I would bring to another planet. But there is a possibly for Leo a missing sense of your emotional cycles, of a sensitivity of how you feel every day, and that you feel a little bit different. Leo is like the sun; it wants to keep shining. It wants it to be noon. It wants to, be very steady and consistent in its heat and its energy and its light. But the moon is more introspective. It's more sensitive, and the cycle is both faster and more extreme. Extreme low tide, extreme high tide. Full moon, fully visible. New moon, completely invisible. And so your Cancer 12th is calling your attention to those things. And the fact that Mars is entering your 12th house this week is saying that you're going to draw a lot of energy inside your awareness and become aware of feelings that you do not necessarily know that you had, and it will be crucial to stay in contact with your motivation during this, because one of the things that can get lost with Mars in the 12th is your motivation. So you want to stay connected to what is driving you. All right. Now let's take the chart in a little more mysterious level, one that's unlikely to be discussed too much, though that's our niche. Early in, the Eris doesn't need to be up there, so we just pretend it's not there. Early in the cardinal signs, of which Cancer is one, Aries is one, Cap is one, Libra is one, there is a grand cross going on. Up till tomorrow, it's a T-square. The T-square consists of Chiron, which we talked about, but also Salacia is in a conjunction with Chiron. And Salacia is about the question of sexual maturity. And what I am taking this to be is the sexual healing aspect. And for you, the sexual healing aspect is taking place in the sign associated with your spirituality. And so we have this schism, which is basically given to us by the Abrahamic religions, whether we're talking Muslim, Jewish, or Christian, that anything sexual is on the dark side. The Christians have mastered this one. The Christians have made this one into McDonald's, and we're all wolfing down quarter pounders. The concept of Christianity, and I can never pronounce this word, is Manichaeism or Monarchism, which is a philosophy predating Christianity, which says that the world is made of dark and light, and that the dark side is anything that involves sexuality or nature, and the light side is anything that involves the sun and intellect and the mountains and worldly power. And so we've been living with this split between a mischaracterization of dark and light. And remember that onto the dark side go women, nature, sex, the earth, and all these things. And on the light side goes all of this stuff that's supposedly yang or masculine. And so there's a lot of conversations about the patriarchy, but we really need to talk about it as Manichaeism, because this is where the split occurs. This is where the feminine side is relegated to the dark side. And in your chart, the feminine side is relegated to the hidden side, and the solar principle is the visible side. And so one of the things Mars is going to do is call you into the invisible, the hidden, the feminine, the moist, the dark, the 12th, Cancer in the 12th, and call into question the concepts of spirituality that have dominated our philosophy, right? Remember that a lot of our philosophy of life is passed on through religion. It's not passed through the minds of great philosophers. It's passed through people who are basically theologizing. I, for one, can't even understand how the concept of theology even exists if no one has any direct evidence of the existence of God. It all seems all speculative to me, and people who do have direct experience of God generally are not that interested in theology because the two are unrelated. So one of the things that Chiron Salacia conjunct, the sexual healing conjunction, is doing in your 9th is getting you to question who you were told you were based on the dictates of religion. And every single person in our society, without exception, is in some way, shape, or form influenced, more or less, usually more, by a self-concept that's been dictated by religion and not philosophy. So I'm suggesting that you go into a more philosophical direction and that you identify, see, and question the issues that come from religion. Know what they are. Know who you were told you were that was not true. Know the things that people said about you. Trace back your religious history, and in particular, take notes on what you were told about your sexuality, because this is the thing that's up. And as Mars enters the moist, dark, inner, hidden side of your psyche in the 12th house, it's going to call into question all of the concepts that have led you to kind of be misled about who you are, and then to further misconstrue who you are, all in the name of spirituality. And what I would suggest is that if your spirituality does not include, in a positive sense, the most organic and natural elements of your sexuality, that's not going to work. It's not going to hold any water, because sexuality on this plane of existence is about how we get into existence. Sexuality is the key to being here. And then it's very quickly eliminated. I don't know if you caught Trevor Noah the other night, who's he's getting funnier, or his writers are anyway, and he's got a picture of Prince Harry holding the baby. You know this picture? And the wife, I forget her name, and the baby's name is Archie. And they're all like, cuckoo, coochie cooing the baby, and we're so awesome, and she's got the best men in the world. And Trevor cuts in and says, it's funny. Everyone's all about the baby, but no one wants to know about how the baby gets there. Just imagine if they had to come on TV and say, when we made this baby through a hot night of raw dogging. It's like, well, yes, that's where babies come from. It's where you came from. And if your spirituality is in any way alienated from the truth of how you got into existence, it is not compatible with this plane of reality. And that's the Chiron Salacia conjunction in the 9th. And it's going to be amplified, focused, called into question by Mars entering the yin realm of Cancer. And furthermore, there is another conjunction waiting to be aspected by Mars, Pholus Quaoar in the 6th. That's an interesting combination. A lot of ancestral factors together in the 6th house, giving you everything from your sense of duty and your sense of what it means to be productive in work every day. And by the way, one of the reasons why, from an astrological standpoint, I don't think Leos are necessarily the big egotistical, bossy types that a lot of people think that they are. I just haven't seen that. I see some struggle around that, but I haven't seen that, is because you have Capricorn on the 6th, and really you want to be a taskmaster. However, which is a good thing to be in this world, because this world needs people who can fucking get the job done, which you can. Cta Leo here is bringing in a whole ancestral realm and a realm of healing associated with the sixth, which is one of the healing realms as well. Chiron has an association with the sixth as well. And this is focusing your healing on some deep ancestral matter that that you're working with. And the working with theme is a theme related to work, and also there's health and service connected to the sixth house. And while you're questioning the religious side of things, while you're saying, how was I defined as a child and as a young adult to be who I am based on the dictates of religion, right? Also, ask yourself how you were defined in other ways, particularly your work destiny, your sense of mission in the world, by your ancestors, parents, great-grandparents, grandparents, and further on, and what the tradition was. Like, every family has a tradition. Like, I'm the fourth in a long line of butchers. Okay. Who was the first in the long line of butchers? And what did his father do, right? Isn't that interesting, right? It's always like the fourth in the long line of butchers. That's exciting. Great. Well, let me tell you something. If you're the fourth in the long line of butchers, you're likely to be the first in the new line of something else. And that's because Uranus is in your 10th house saying, all right, it's time to be the first in a long line of something else, to change the tradition. But it's very important to know the tradition, to understand the tradition, to have a concept of what it is, to know what you've been, in a sense, been roped into, told you were, and maybe made to do. For all we know, kids are made to do things all the time. They're made, they're made to get involved in subjects that they don't like. They're made to give up the things that they love to do. They're denied the permission to play the instrument they want to play. They're told they can't be musicians. They're told that, as I was told, writers never succeed. You can't make a living as a writer. Well, that's funny. Me and 10 other people make a living as a writer, thanks to my writing. So you are at this point where the transits are all acting in concert to shock you from one reality into the next, like make a turn of the wheel just enough to reorient you and set you free enough to make some decisions. And you want to stay a step ahead of yourself when you are under transits like this, and not be so inclined to let things happen to you as much as you're going to put your alchemy out into the world and kind of blend your chemistry with the world around you, and let yourself kind of be in a dynamic interplay. And I've been counseling against being reactive in most of these readings, because reaction doesn't usually get us very far. But you can be a little more reactive. You can be a little more kind of chemically available to see what happens, and a little bit more, or a lot more actively involved in a conscious process of experimentation, which includes an experimentation of what you believe, of what you want to do, and what it would be like to not be the person that they all told you that you were. That is what I have to say to you. Thanks for tuning in, and I suggest you check out your rising sign if you know it. If not, we'll be happy to look it up for you. And thank you for trusting me as your astrologer and for being a Planet Waves customer. Bye for now. Click.